it's hard to get the disruption from a rush standpoint because they get rid of the ball so quickly. A lot of teams are rushing 3 guys even and dropping 8 into coverage. There's that's one way to approach it. I think if you can't get disruption in the passing game through the rush, then you got to do it through the coverage by getting your hands on people, whether it be in rolled up coverages or press coverages or whatever. But you can try to blitz them. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, depending on the type of play call that they have and the amount of time the quarterback's going to have to hold on the ball to do it. So, but they're hard to get to. They haven't given up many sacks. Actually, just looking at some of the other teams, that we've studied, more of the sacks have come on 1st and 2nd down than they have on 3rd down. Probably when they're getting into some of their play action stuff and they're holding on to the ball a little bit longer. But they do a great job. Quarterback O'Connell's playing exceptionally well. Very seasoned player, understands the system, where to go with the football. I know he had a couple of interceptions up at Wisconsin, but that's very uncharacteristic of how he's played. He's a very mature competitor and leader of that offense and has a really good grasp of what he's being asked to do.
John Steppe, go ahead.
Hey Jay, good to see you.
Good to see you.
What have you seen from Ethan Hurkett this year?
Ethan's made steady progress. He's done a good job. He had a big sack in the game, this past weekend against Northwestern. And he's probably been somewhere in that 20 to 25 snap per game range, which is up, a little bit. Of course, he was hurt last year, so, we didn't get to see as much of him, but he had a good spring, a good preseason camp, and he's just kind of continued to evolve and trend, on an upward type of a fashion. But super hard worker, physical guy. And again, he's just kind of a product of coming in and working hard every day and doing the things you got to do to try to make daily improvement through your fundamentals and the things that we stress. But a lot of that just has to do with his attitude and how he approaches things. Really good kid to work with.
Tom Kakert.
Hey Jay, good to see you.
Good to see you, Tom.
Wanted to ask you about Deontay Craig and Wyatt Black and how they have kind of come on, especially Wyatt coming back from his injury.
Yeah, unfortunately, again, he was off to a real good start in camp and early in the beginning of the season, and then obviously had an injury that he had to deal with. But we've been able to kind of gradually bring him back, just a few snaps more and more each day in practice and then in games, and it's just a really good bonus, a plus for us to have a body that big on the inside. Just a hard guy to block because of his size, his length. He's also extremely knowledgeable, probably one of the most knowledgeable guys in the room that we have, just from the standpoint of, having a grasp of the X's and O's and what's being asked of him. Real good student of the game and another really good guy to coach. But expecting him to get more snaps and just continue to trend upward as some of the rust gets knocked off. And I think he's in a good spot right now, and hopefully we'll have a good game Saturday. Deontay, kind of like Ethan, and that he's been in that 20 to 25 snap range per game. And he's really come on. I think he's made great strides, both in run and pass defense. As I've said this before publicly, and I'll say it again, I think he's got a really good knack for rushing the passer, good coordination of his hands and feet, understanding, body position of the offensive lineman that he's rushing, and just has a real good knack and feel for that. So hopefully he'll continue. He had a sack Saturday, and hopefully he'll continue along those lines and being able to give us good productivity and quality snaps as we go through these last 4 games.
Chad Leistikow.
Hey, Jay. Hey, wanted to ask about Hercules. He had Lucas Van Ness had the highest snap count against Northwestern. It seems like with Wyatt back and Aaron Graves playing more, I guess he's playing a little bit more on the edge. Where do you see him having the greatest impact, and how can you use him in this last month to your advantage?
Yeah, I think probably his snaps inside, probably, all things being equal, they wouldn't have probably happened had we not had some of the injuries that we were dealing with in there. 3rd down might be an exception, but for the majority of the season, we've used him outside and we'll continue to use him out there. Of all the guys in the room, he's got the most, probably the best combination, I guess I should say, of speed, power, and size and length, and all the things that we look for out of a defensive lineman. So we just, we'll rotate him with John and Joe. Those guys have kind of been in a 3-man rotation with Ethan and Deontay coming in after that. But Ethan and Deontay are doing well, but just probably not getting the same snaps as Joe, John, and Lucas. And I think Lucas will be similar to John and Joe if we can balance that out the way we want to. But he can have an impact on the game just because of his explosiveness. Again, be it pass rush or run defense. He's good playing base technique. He's good moving. What he needs to continue to work on is just understanding all the little intricacies of the position. Because unlike Joe and John, he hasn't had 3 years to play out there on the edge. So I think you're just going to see him get better and better as he continues to play out there.
David Eicholt.
Jay, always appreciate the time. Good to see you.
Yeah, David.
7 sacks last week against Northwestern, 7 different players. Even with some of the injuries that you guys have had, it seems like the defensive line as a whole really hasn't missed a beat. Can you just speak to the versatility of that unit and how you guys have continued to just progress and keep on that upward trajectory? Because it seems like you can provide so many different looks with the players that you got at your disposal.
Well, just a couple things to touch on your point and expand on that. I think one of the best things about the 7 sack total was, as you mentioned, there were 7 different people involved in that. You're going to see games where teams might have 7 sacks and one guy might have 3 or 4 of them, but this was spread out among the group. So it's good to see everybody produce. And what we really emphasize in the room is that they work together as a unit. Sometimes a guy is just going to flat out beat somebody one-on-one. But more often than not, you've got to have a collective group of 4 people who are in their rush lanes with right leverage on the quarterback. So when a guy has an opportunity, to make a move and finish a rush, that the quarterback's where he expects him to be. So that's something that we've really emphasized, in our 4-man rush stuff. Obviously, we had the capability to bring a 5th guy or a 6th guy in certain calls, but those 4 guys up front have done a really nice job working together as a unit. And just if you look back at Iowa football over the years, you haven't seen a lot of major changes with what we do schematically. I know I've been asked about this before. And I think the consistency and the way we've evolved just with our production and quality of play up front is just a byproduct of these guys doing the same things over and over and over again over the course of not just weeks and months, but in some cases years. If you come out and watch day 1 practice going into fall camp, you're going to see the same drills being coached that you are the last day of the regular season. It just doesn't change. We got things fine-tuned to where we feel like we know what we need to emphasize and work on as far as how it pertains to our package. And those guys do a really good job working on those things. And that's why those skill sets continue to improve. So hopefully that answers your question. No, it's a long answer.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks, Jay.
Mm-hmm.
Kennington, go ahead.
Morning, Coach. Appreciate you taking the time speaking
Sure
with
thing.
us this morning. Wanted to ask you a bit of a recruiting question. The coaching staff did a good job of locking up a lot of the 23 class before the season began. I'm wondering, is there an advantage there where maybe you might get a head start on 24 and 25 guys, or has the mentality not changed and you're still primarily focused on locking down the rest of the 23 class?
Well, I think both things have to happen at the same time, the way recruiting is going on right now. It's never just the class of the year that you're in, that you're working on. You're always working for, the juniors and the sophomores, even in some cases. You may not be as long in the relationship with some of those guys because you haven't had the time with them. You may not have had the chance to evaluate them as thoroughly as you would possibly like to. So that's kind of an ongoing process. But certainly we're trying to close out this 23 class, and at the same time, I know, like for myself, when I go out and watch these games on Friday nights, I'm looking at juniors and sophomores as well. So just to sit there and I guess kind of compartmentalize it into one particular class. No, I think we're well beyond that, and trying to see what's in the next class behind, if not the next 2 classes behind this 23 class.
Scott Dochman.
Yeah, Jay, along those lines, I did want to ask you about recruiting in state. How do you feel about your 2023 pledges right now? I know you can't speak to them individually, but it seems like you've got a really good start in state with 2024. Is most of the energy now just, at least in state, not outside the state, mostly focused on building that cohesive bond with the 2023 guys and maybe identified preferred walk-ons? Or are there other prospects that you're identifying? Because you've had a few that have kind of went under the radar that have landed scholarships either late in the recruiting process or spilling over into the traditional signing day.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's all, even in just, if you just take the class of 23, for example, and just look at those guys without respect to the 24s and 25s, even within the class of 23s, there's varying levels of the depth of your relationship with the guy, depending on how long you spent with him. Again, without naming names, there's some guys in that 23 class I know that I've had communication with. This will be going on 3 years. There's other guys who maybe weren't on your radar at that point in time that have gotten onto it, be it their junior year or maybe even early in their senior year, as you continue to evaluate and talk to high school coaches and things of that nature. So again, it's an ongoing process. It never really stays the same. Again, you just have to keep your antennas up, your ears open. And the thing about guys in the state of Iowa, of course, especially compared to lots of other states where they're playing 3 and 4 sports, many of them don't develop as quickly because they're doing other things besides just trying to be sports specific and train, weight train and prepare for football itself. So you have to continue to look, you have to continue to evaluate and see how these guys progress, because every year it happens where you've got some guys that come into the picture late that maybe you didn't think would a couple years ago.
Okay, I see